All right. Appreciate everybody singing out. I think the weather has helped our allergies and congestion. I feel like everybody's singing out nice and loud this morning. I appreciate that. It's very encouraging. We're going to be in Matthew 22 this morning, studying from the book of Matthew again. It's great to see you here. We do have visitors here. We want you to know you're welcome and always enjoy seeing visitors here. So good to see Haley back with us and also Dwight back with us and all the struggles they've been going through. And they're still pressing on and continuing on in faithfulness. And I've been hearing a lot of words from a lot of different people about the encouragements they've received. And I know you guys are working and doing a lot, and I appreciate all that y'all do to lift one another up. This morning we're going to be in Matthew 22 and looking at Jesus and his final week again. We've been studying through Matthew 22. As a side, as we've been going through this, we've been seeing the Jewish leaders being hit with some very strong teachings. Jesus, it all kind of goes back in the book of Matthew to chapter 21. Jesus comes into the temple and throws over the tables and tries to cleanse the temple. And then the next day he comes back to Jerusalem, preparing for the unleavened bread, the Passover feast, and all that's about to go on. He comes back in and he finds a fig tree and doesn't find any fruit on it. And that just sets all this up. As you study through chapters 21 and 22, you don't really find a break where it says the next day. Other Gospels tell us that multiple days did pass, but Matthew doesn't give us that impression. It's as though the cursing of the fig tree happened that morning, and then Jesus goes into Jerusalem and he tells them three parables that all make it very clear that they're failing to produce fruit in Jerusalem. They're failing to glorify God in the work that they're doing in Jerusalem. Jesus has come there and he's not finding the fruit that he expects to see. And so we've gone through the three parables in Matthew 22, and now we're going to talk about three questions that the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes asked Jesus in response to these parables. And so that's what we're going to be studying tonight. This morning is the first question that Jesus asked. Imagine being a disciple and witnessing all of these events transpire. You see Jesus curse the fig tree. There's no fruit on it. He goes to Jerusalem and he tells parables that make it very clear they are not fruitful. They are not glorifying God as they should. All the work and all the effort that they're putting into worshiping and glorifying God is empty and useless. And then imagine seeing what you're about to see. The interrogation of Jesus in front of the crowds. They ask him very hard questions to try to show that he is false. They're not really trying to glorify him or come to know him or really understand him more so that they can believe in him. They're always trying to make him stumble. And we see that from the very beginning of this section. Let's read verses 15 and 16. It says, "Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, 'Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully. And you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances.'" Notice the words of these men who come to Jesus. First of all, notice these are disciples of the Pharisees. The Pharisees themselves do not come and approach Jesus, but they send their disciples to Jesus. That's interesting. They have their own group of disciples and followers, and instead of coming, they decide to send their disciples to Jesus. But notice who's along with them. He says, Herodians. Who in the world is that? Herodians. Well, Herod is in the first part of that name. So we gather that maybe they're supporters of Herod. Maybe the army that surrounds Herod. Maybe they're seeking to arrest Jesus with the things that they're going to say. And so imagine these disciples of the Pharisees come up to Jesus, and there's Herodians with them. Maybe to some it would be obvious, but Matthew just cuts right to the chase and says they are seeking to entangle him with his words. So they have ulterior motives in what they're saying. And the first words that come out of their mouth are flattering words. Teacher, we know that you are true and you teach the way of God truthfully. You know, this is the kind of praise, exaltation, adoration that Jesus should have received upon first entering into Jerusalem. This is what he deserved. This is glorifying God because of the Messiah that he has sent. You are true, and everything you do and everything you teach is truthful. You are good, in other words. And they go on to say, you don't care about anyone's opinion. That's kind of a good thing. And he says, you are not swayed by appearances. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? You're not swayed by appearances. Here are these disciples of the Pharisees coming up to him, appearing to be on his side, appearing to be praising him and glorifying him. And the very words they speak are condemning what they're doing. You're not swayed by appearances. Well, that's what you're trying to do. If you really believe that, you wouldn't be doing the very thing that you're doing. But they're really just trying to build him up. There's a lot of deceitfulness in this. And this is the way evil acts. It builds you up and makes you think that you're good and that you're wonderful so that you become proud and then they can watch you fall. And that's ultimately what they're trying to do here to Jesus. They're trying to build him up to say that he is great, he is wonderful, he doesn't get deceived by like everybody else. He's on top of his game all the time. You are such a good teacher and leader. And if you're there listening in the crowd, you're thinking, he's doing it. Jesus is converting the disciples of the Pharisees. They're now coming over to Jesus' side. They're ready to serve Jesus. But first, they've got a really hard question to ask him. It says, verse 17, tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? That's kind of an odd question. Why do they ask this question? What is this about? Why does this question really matter? Of all the things they could ask Jesus, of all the ways they could trip Jesus up, why are they using this question? If you think about it, the Jewish people have lived under foreign oppression for over 1,000 years. There's been times when they didn't have foreign oppression and they ruled themselves. And then there's been lots of times when they have been oppressed by either Assyrians or Egypt or Babylonians or the Greeks or the Persians or the Romans. They've been oppressed by all these different kingdoms. And here they come asking the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we be doing this? Is it okay? Does God really want us to do that? Are we failing to trust God by paying taxes to Caesar? But there's some underlying motives in them, because there's been other leaders who've come up before Jesus who have rebelled against the Roman authorities and rebelled against this idea that we should pay taxes to Rome. And what's going to happen if Jesus comes out and says, absolutely not lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? You should be trusting in God, not in man. And so you should not be paying Caesar your taxes. You should instead give it to God. That's kind of what they're hoping for. You should give it to me, maybe, and support my cause. Maybe that's what they're hoping to hear. And those words, how would those fall on the Herodians' ears? It wouldn't be good. Everything would fall apart. Jesus would surely be arrested, and the Jews were hoping that the Romans and the Herodians would take care of the killing of Jesus for them. And that's really what this is all about as you read through this. That's the underlying ideas and motives of these men. So what is Jesus going to do? How's Jesus going to respond? We probably know this is a pretty commonly known text that Jesus sees and knows everything that's coming. Look at verse 18. Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why put me to the test, you hypocrites?" He's not swayed for 1 second. "Show me the coin for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" And they said, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, "Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God." Notice Jesus knows this is a trap. He knows the malice that's in their hearts. He knows what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish. And if you're there and you're listening to Jesus asking, or first of all stating, "Why do you put me to the test, you hypocrites?" You're like, oh, wait a second. Something's going on here. And maybe that would deter those hypocrites, and maybe that would make them think, oh man, he's caught us. But typically, they're so wrapped up in their whole plan and their whole plot that they just think, that's okay. We'll get him to say something. It doesn't matter what he calls us. But hypocrite shows that they're actors. They're not what they appear to be, which kind of goes back to what they've already praised him for, not swayed by appearances. And so he says, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? You should already know who I am, what I'm here for, what I've proclaimed, that I am good, that I am true, that I understand all things. What are you doing? Why aren't you believing in me? Why are you not here seeking a reason to believe in me? You're seeking a reason to disbelieve in me. You're seeking a reason to destroy me." And then Jesus asks for a coin, a denarius. You see this on the bottom left of the screen, the denarius. And he asked them for this, which would have been about a day's wage. It would have been a common thing. And he asked them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" This is kind of building up suspensefully. Jesus says, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" Oh, let's get a coin out. You know, if you're a Pharisee, it's Caesar's. And if you're a Jew in the audience and you're hearing this, everybody there is thinking, that's a graven image. That's an idol right there. That's got a graven image on it of the face of Emperor of Caesar. And the Roman practice is to worship Caesar. So here you go. This is setting Jesus up perfectly. Now all he's going to do is he's just going to condemn the coins of Caesar and the oppression of Caesar and the worship of Caesar. And then we've got him. He's going to be destroyed. And so all of the enemies are probably getting really excited as they break out one of these engraven images of Caesar on a coin. And everybody would be thinking, this is, as a Jew, this would be something they would not enjoy, is using the money of Caesar with a little face of Caesar on the money. That would just not be something they'd enjoy. They were extremely against graven images of any kind. Yet they had to use this as part of their transactions. And Jesus, instead of saying, you shouldn't worship Caesar, instead of saying, don't give Caesar anything, get rid of his face or anything against Caesar, he says, give back to Caesar what's his. And everybody would just be floored at the statement, give back to Caesar what's his. Because that coin has the graven image of Caesar on it, he says it belongs to Caesar. It's his. Give it back to him. If you're a Pharisee, you're just sitting there like, whoa, wait a second now. You just completely went against what we were expecting. You just completely went against what we even feel and believe. we love our money, and Pharisees were all about money. They have a significant heart issue when it comes to money. In fact, as a Pharisee, they wanted the people to stop paying taxes to Caesar, and they wanted people to pay money to the temple. And they had temple taxes. They had all kinds of taxes that they would implement to get all the money that they could. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, the religious leaders, they don't want to be subject to anyone. But they fail to recognize that God is the one who put Rome in authority. God is the one who's in control. God is the one who has subjected them to the oppression that they're enduring under the Romans. And so Jesus just blows their mind and says, give back to Caesar what's his. Render to Caesar what belongs to him. It wears his image. It's his. Give it back to him. But then this really is making a strong statement about who Jesus is. Because then he comes in and says, give to God what belongs to him. You see, Jesus is not here for rebellion. That's not why he's here. It may seem that way as he teaches things that are opposed to the religious leaders of the day, but he's not here to promote a rebellion and a defiance against the Roman kingdom and the Roman authority. And the Jews hated that about him. They wanted to rebel against the Roman authority. And Jesus also was not here for their money. They assumed he was. I mean, everybody assumes that everybody's out for money, but Jesus was totally different. He didn't care anything about everybody else's money. He wasn't using people to take advantage of them, to get all the money he could out of them, to promote himself. His desire was to glorify God. And so the statement here, give to God what belongs to him, give to God the things that are God's, is going back to what we've seen all throughout chapters 21 and 22, that they are failing to give God the glory he deserves. And Jesus is trying to point out, you must stop being selfish and self-seeking. You must give to God what he deserves. But then you might ask the question, what does God not have? I mean, what does it mean whenever he says, give to God the things that are God's? What is not God's? Everything belongs to God. At first look, that would have been the first thing that I would have said. But what does God not have from the Pharisees? What does God not have from the Jewish people and from the Sadducees and from the scribes? He doesn't have their honor, their glory, their appreciation. He doesn't have their heart. He doesn't have their love and their affection like he deserves. And you see in this that men very easily take away God's praise and keep it for themselves. And this is what Jesus is trying to point out to them. But there's more to this than just what meets the eye. The idea of give to God what is his is joined with the idea give to Caesar what's his, which was joined to the idea of when you look at a coin, there's an image of Caesar on the coin. What's his? What's God's? What's his image placed on? You go back to Genesis chapter 1, what do you see? The image of God is on us. We are the image of God. We are created in his image. And so giving back to God what is his means giving ourselves to God. Because we are created in his image. And so the words of Jesus hit on so many levels to show that God is worthy of our honor and our praise and our lives in service to him. Because ultimately we belong to him. So what's the message in this text for us? As we see the Jews receive something from Caesar, they receive roads, they receive infrastructure, they receive some level of law and order. They are expected to pay taxes on those things. And they're not supposed to be upset about paying taxes to Caesar for those things, because they remember that God controls Caesar. God is the one who puts Caesar in authority. And God is the one who has provided all these things through Caesar, and it's okay to give back to Caesar the things that are his. And not to be so focused on keeping and keeping and keeping, and being greedy to have more and more of what belongs to Caesar for ourselves. This is what this message is trying to give to us. But also, as they receive everything from God, it is expected that they would turn and give God glory for everything that they've received. And this is the bigger message, I think, in this story, is that we must think about and consider the blessings God has given us. And we must be willing to return to God a portion of what He has given us. And that means that whatever God has given us through the government systems, we return to the government systems. Whatever God has given us through our lives and the blessings that we enjoy in this life, we must be willing to give back to Him. And we don't use the government as an excuse to be greedy and to not give money to God. Well, I had to pay so much in taxes that I don't have enough to give to God. Nor do we say, well, I have to give so much to God, therefore I can't pay my taxes. We don't do that. We see it all as coming from God, and everything we have, we want to give back to God, to give Him glory. So that's what the Jews are supposed to learn, and that's what we're supposed to learn. Let's talk a little bit about application. What is our mindset toward a corrupt government? Maybe we look at this and we think, well, I'm glad we don't serve Caesar. I'm glad we're not in Rome. But wait a second now. Our government's totally different than theirs. I mean, our government is messed up. There is so much wrong with our government. There are so many problems. There is so much corruption. There is so much evil. How should we respond to our government? Does this have anything to do with us? I would say absolutely yes. Do we really think that the Roman government was better than ours? I hear people make all kinds of statements. And I hear people have all kinds of thoughts and questions, like, what about the actions that made us a country? We are a country that was created as a result of rebellious people who rebelled against the immoral, corrupt government that they were under. I mean, how do you deal with that? I don't know how to deal with that. I don't want to justify the evil in it, nor do I want to say that it was all evil necessarily and that it was all immoral. I don't really know how to deal with that. What about should we just blindly obey everything the government tells us to do? Well, obviously not. There is a sense in which we must learn to draw the line. There are some things that the government will tell us to do that will go against what is morally good and right for us to do. And we must then take a stand on what is morally good and upright. We're going to learn all about that in Daniel. And then there's a sense in which the government will tell us to stop doing or to do things that go against our commands from God. To worship, praise, glorify, to work in His kingdom, to share the good news with others. There are commands that the government will give us that will in some way prohibit us from doing the very things God has commanded us to do. And if that's the case, then yes, we are to take our stand for what God has told us to do and not render to Caesar the respect and honor and adoration that he deserves in that way of obeying that command. But we can still respect and honor and give him what is supposed to be given to the authorities while disobeying the commands that go against God. And that's the way we must see things. That our goal, our mission, is to somehow balance the two. To somehow give God all the glory, praise, and honor that He deserves, but also to respect and honor the government that He has set up over us and give them what they deserve, just because God says they deserve it, whether they're immoral or evil or all those things. A lot of people will say, I'm not going to give taxes because they're using those taxes in evil ways, and I'm taking part in evil. Well, guess what? The Romans were doing all kinds of evil things. And Jesus said, give to Caesar what's Caesar's. So the main thing is that we must not be a rebellious people. And I think one of the things that we see in this is rebellion is often rooted in greed. In greed and selfishness. We want to rebel against our government because we want to keep more for ourselves. I mean, today, we're not the extremely oppressed with a tyrannical government that is hateful and hurtful and killing us off one by one. Not to say that we're not going that direction, but we live in a very benevolent society, a very benevolent government. Historically, that has not been the case. There have been so many governments that have tried to combine religion, church and state, and they've, as a result, come up with all kinds of legislation to legislate their morality. And guess what? Their morality is not God's morality. Their rules are not God's rules. And this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing all kinds of political correct rules, laws, that do not line up with Scripture. And so as we try to legislate morality, we create oppression. And what we see is we are in a society, we are in a country, we find ourselves in a place that values religious liberty. And that's what we should be excited about and encouraged by and hope and pray continues. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some level of laws and morality that governs and that keeps order. All those things are good. But as we think about church and state combining in history, it has been very oppressive and resulted in a lot of suffering. So we don't want that on either direction, on either side. And that's not the goal. The goal is for God to be in control, for us to trust in God, and to give the respect and honor that is due to our governments without rebellion and without greed in our hearts to keep all that we can for ourselves. You can go through your taxes and pay as little as you want to, but as little as you have to, that's fine. You don't have to just give all your money over, but give to Caesar what's Caesar's. Pay what is owed, what they expect of you, without the grumbling or complaining, knowing that God is the one who put them there. Romans 13, we read at the beginning of this, also speaks to this exact same idea. We don't have much time to study that, but it's the same exact thought. Give the government their due. Live peacefully with all. Honor the king, honor the emperor, honor the president, honor the Congress, honor the governor, honor those who are in authority. But then also there's an application point here to be made about how we see our things. He says, render to God the things that are God's. How do we view the things that are ours in this life? Every blessing that we have, how do we view it? Do we view it as all belonging to us? I think that's kind of our tendency, isn't it? I mean, I worked hard. I made this money. I've worked for years to get where I am. I have studied. I have put in the work. It's all mine. But God has given us every single thing we enjoy. God has given us every breath we breathe. God has given us every ability that we have to do everything that we do. Every penny we've earned is not the result of my ability to create myself and to make myself live. It's the result of God. The environment I live in, the opportunities at my disposal, they're all from God. And nothing is really ours. And so my attitude, my mindset should be to magnify the name of God with all that I have. With all that I have. I use it for His glory. If I want to buy something for recreational purposes, I'm thinking about how I can use that for God's glory. It doesn't matter what it is that I buy, what it is that I do, whatever it is I focus my mind upon. and spend my time pursuing, it should be with the mindset that I'm really here ultimately to glorify God and do the things that bring glory to his name. The Jews did not see this. They were rebelling against God and looking for reasons to disbelieve Jesus, to not believe Jesus. We can't be like that. Maybe there's somebody here this morning who's hearing all of this and thinking, well, okay, but I don't know that I believe in Jesus. I don't know that I really trust that I'm created in the image of God. And maybe you're coming here and you're listening not really to believe, but you're listening to find something to disbelieve. Maybe you've let greed in your heart and self-promotion in your heart, and that's the thing that you're pursuing in your life as though it's going to give you ultimate satisfaction and fulfillment. It's a dead-end road. And Jesus has come to provide relief for those of us who finally come to understand that. Who finally come to understand that I have a purpose here that's bigger than me. And give in to God and give in to Jesus and live for his praise and live for his glory, live for his honor, do everything I can to magnify his name for everybody around me to see how wonderful he really is. We are his image bearers. Thanks to Jesus, we can truly bear his image and glorify his name. You're here for a purpose. And the purpose is not to be superior than others. The purpose is to love others with humility and self-sacrifice and to glorify God in whatever you do. Isn't it wonderful to have a purpose? I mean, we've been just focused in on this. We've been just saturating ourselves with this for months now. Ephesians is all about it. Matthew is getting into it. We're here for a purpose, and everything we do should be focused around the purpose of building up the body of Christ, building up one another, building up ourselves in the Word and in our work and in our love toward one another so that God's name is glorified. I hope that you're doing that, and I hope that we can help you do that. If you're not, if you haven't submitted your life to Christ, and you want to give him the glory that he's due, it happens when you, first of all, confess your need for Jesus. Confess your belief that he is worthy of your praise and glory and honor. Exalt him with your mouth, with your thoughts, with your heart. And make the decision to receive the blessing he offers you. You can be forgiven of all of your sins if you make the decision to repent from those sins and be washed in the waters of baptism for forgiveness. Then you can truly live your purpose in life to the praise of God's glory. And if there's anything that we can do to help you with that, will you please let us? Please come as we stand and as we sing.